very far away. It's nice to see everyone. So who took the orange line today? No one. Okay. I just got off the green line, having connected at Copley from Forest Hills on one of the Orange Line shuttles. It went pretty smoothly. It was a little bit longer than a usual commute, but no real bottlenecks or traffic along the way. Buses and trains coming very shortly at each stop that we were getting on and off at. And overall, very hopeful that it seems like much of the planning and all the details that we had discussed have been implemented, and so far, so good.
Any major concerns, signage issues, anything like that, directional, like help for people if they have questions, you have ambassadors out there?
Yeah, I think that's the biggest issue is, for example, when you get off the bus at Forest Hills, coming in from many points south of the city, that bus, there's no direct signage in the busway of how to get to the shuttle buses, which are on the other side and down the stairs from where the buses unload, where the MBTA buses unload. And so we'll need some signage there. I've been taking notes along the way. There are also certain stops along the way where we should see multilingual signage, just directing people where to go. But I did see a good number of staff on the ground at various stations, especially at the transit hubs. There were blue bikes still at the docks, at many of the docks that we passed by, so it seems that the supply is there and the rebalancing of the bikes is working out. Many of the routes that we had mapped out with turning radiuses and trees that had been formerly blocking the windshields have been resolved, and we're still tweaking things as we go and updating it day by day.
For the riders you were talking with today, what was the feedback you were getting from them?
People were pleasantly surprised at the availability of buses that were there. So when I got off at Forest Hills and eventually found our way to where the shuttle buses were, there were 5 lined up ready to go, and everybody had a seat. It was spaced out. It was comfortable on the shuttle buses. It's not a, it's, let me put it this way. MBTA riders are always ready for anything. If you are on the system every day, you could be prepared for anything to happen. And so I think people are used to having to navigate the complexities, and the goal of this surge period is that we will eliminate some of that need to be resilient on a day-to-day basis as an MBTA rider by eliminating slow zones, bringing online the new Orange Line trains. The real test of how this period is going will come when schools are all back in session and Boston Public Schools start later next month.
Advice while you were riding, like what they should do, or any directions or anything like that?
I was on the shuttle bus for most of it, so I wasn't really walking around and on the ground, but every time that we got off the bus, there were plenty of people, staff from the MBTA and other ambassadors, directing folks where to walk. For example, when you get off at Copley, the drop-off is closer towards the city at the end of, almost at the end of Copley Square near the church, near Trinity Church, and you have to walk back about a block and a half to get to the actual Green Line station to come into downtown. But there were plenty of folks on the ground, and we did see a presence of a good number of public safety officials as well, ready to direct traffic and ensure that any cars that were parked in the the new bus lanes were moved along. And so all those pieces seem to have been coming together pretty well.
How about the greenhouse closure now? Is there anything you do unsettling about that? How's that going?
I hope to be on the Green Line potentially even later today just to see how that works. It's the part from where I was coming in on the southern side of the city hasn't been impacted and is a very important connector between the two halves of the Orange Line shuttle. So so far we are still monitoring the situation, and the hope is that it is a little bit of a slower ridership period now anyway, as people are wrapping up their summer plans. Again, we will see as the weeks go on that more and more commuters are coming back in person and to school. Yeah, so if you are on the shuttle buses, you'll see, or if you're at the stations, you'll see a number of MBTA staff wearing the kind of reflective, bright yellow vests to identify where people can go and how to get on and off. There will be folks wearing red that are specifically to help guide students and with the information about how to go and just to keep an extra eye out if our young people need any additional assistance. I think as I've mentioned before, the superintendent has also worked with the MBTA to secure 5,000 loaded free 7-day pass. How do I describe? 5,000 preloaded free 7-day passes for families to be able to ride with their students ahead of time before school starts, test out the routes and see how those are going. And we are still working and pushing for there to be some dedicated shuttles for specific schools that might, for example, go the entire length of the Orange Line so our students don't have to get on and off the bus into the Green Line and on and off the bus again.
No guarantees of additional capacity on the East Line.
We're still working on it. That day by day, there's a long task list of things to do, and the deadline for getting many of the details around the surface level transportation alternative service was Friday night. For schools, some schools are already coming back in person and already coming back. You see some of the non-BPS schools, students already returning, but we are watching that first week of September date for when we have to be ready with all of the BPS preparations.
How much longer your commute was today?
It's hard to tell because we had many friends riding along with us. So we stopped to talk a couple different times along the way. I think it was about 50 minutes between when we got on the shuttle bus at Forest Hills to getting here. Does that sound about, or a little more? 35. Was it shorter? 35? Yeah. Okay. Okay, perfect. All right. So then between the bus and that chunk, it was probably about the same as what you have to be ready for when you're getting on the line formerly known as the old Orange Line. Oh, sorry.
Tema de estacionamiento, vimos ahora que veníamos en el autobús con usted que para pasar el autobús de costado,
Sí.
los carros estaban a la par.
Muy
¿Cómo
cerca.
la van a trabajar con eso?
Esa situación es diferente con la situación normal, especialmente con las calles que hay muy cerca con los vehículos más grandes. Entonces, este autobuses no es el MBTA autobuses con el flexibilidad de ver otros pasajeros y el entrenamiento también. Entonces, cada detalle de calle, de árboles, de diferentes destinaciones, he incorporado también en la situación. En las calles hay otros marques de un espacio solamente para autobuses o un espacio solamente para los ciclistas o para en autobús hacer un turn. Girar. Entonces, es muy importante de cada persona que es en las calles, pasajeros en autobuses o también estos pasajeros residentes que en los vehículos, tener atención a todos los detalles en el medio ambiente.
Free network of buses that serves a section of the city that's kind of put out by the Orange Line being out of service. Have you had any chance to think about doing that ahead of time?
Sorry,
When you made the 3 buses free
Yep.
in the city, are you
was that
feeling
related to this, you mean, or?
vindicated about having done that because there's a section of the city that gets serviced by the Orange Line and doesn't have any other access? So are you feeling vindicated about that?
I have been feeling vindicated about the free service since the day it started. I mean, if you talk to any commuters who depend on our bus system, depend on public transportation, the ease of mind and the burden that's lifted when you don't have to factor in the extra layers of calculating the finances or planning or hitting this or that connection just right, that has a big impact on how much time you have to spend with your family, your mental health, whether you are getting to work on time. And so we have seen tremendous success already, even before this Orange Line situation with the free bus routes. It is all the more important now as we see the resiliency of the system matters a lot. Having the Green Line cover some of the same stops as the Orange Line usually does, having buses that can run parallel routes that we've been able to add bus priority for, and having the bus routes without financial barriers has meant that people have some other options. We've been working to try to make even more available. Blue bikes are free for this period, but not everyone feels safe right now with the level of protected cycling infrastructure that's there. So every action that we are taking to build a multimodal transportation system means that if unexpected things come up in the future, if there's a major storm and an elevator gets knocked out at a T station, or if there is a reason why a certain intersection needs to be blocked off, having all those options be convenient, reliable, affordable to everyone is absolutely essential for the growth of our economy and for our communities to be connected and for people to get where they need to go.
Goal of making the T-free, like vis-a-vis this inconvenience and the money that it's going to take? Are you reassessing that goal?
One important, I think, piece of this shutdown to watch will be the impact of commuter rail being free for this duration. There are many people who live very close to commuter rail stations, myself included, but because the usual price of taking the commuter rail is almost 3 times as much as taking bus and subway, you don't do that on a daily basis. That forces even more people onto our roads when commuter rail is there as an option that's usually on time, quite comfortable, spacious, air conditioned, it's predictable, but it's just so expensive usually. And so I plan to I already took the commuter rail on Saturday. It went very smoothly, as it always does, and we were able to board quickly with all the kids in tow, and no charge made a big difference. We are looking very carefully to see what it means for ridership when commuter rail is actually affordable to everyone, and therefore what the fare policy should be. For many of these stops, for some of the stops, the commuter rail stops in Boston, to get on is the same price as an MBTA, as a train or subway ride, for example, along the stops in the Fairmount line. But for other parts, Boston has stops that are deemed not Zone 1A in the inner core, but Zone 1 and Zone 2, with the prices going up to as much as over $8 a ride out in Hyde Park to get into the city. And so with that barrier being lifted, I think we will see an impact on traffic and how smoothly it can go, because more people are choosing to get on that train and on our buses as well. We need to see more frequency of the stops being made on the commuter rail, and we need to see that we're making progress towards long-term solution for affordability.
If you can.
And in terms of free seat,
I think we've seen just how much it matters when the need to close down part of our system affects every part of our daily lives. You see how fundamental public transportation is. It is a public good, just like anything else that we rely on and take for granted in some ways, that we can send our kids to school for free and they get access to the education that we all deserve, that we can enjoy public parks without having to pay a charge, to be able to sit under a bench in the shade of a tree, that we can go into a library in your neighborhood, take out a book and read for fun or learn about something and not have to pay to do that. Public transportation is just as fundamental to people's lives. I'm really excited that the Attorney General's plan in her campaign for governor includes many pieces that would immediately get us to a pathway that is much more affordable for everyone. A low-income fare for residents across the entire system who receive benefits and truly cannot afford the prices that the T usually has, as well as a pathway to fare-free buses, which would not only make it more affordable, but would speed up the buses as they no longer have to stop and wait for every single person to pay.
If you were to give the MBTA a report of your trip today, what would be the strengths and what would be some areas of improvement?
The strengths were the availability of shuttle buses was just as promised. We were told it would be every 45 seconds buses available to leave from the starting and ending points, stretching out with traffic to anywhere from just 1 to 2 minutes in between the buses. That is definitely what we saw. There was staff on the ground at most stations directing people and giving information, so that was great. There are still some places where we need better signage and signage in multiple languages that we can work on and make sure that we're addressing in the days to come.
And Mayor, City Transportation Center now up and running. How can that transportation center make sure traffic is better on even some of the worst days we might see ahead if more people are coming in?
Yeah, so upstairs in this building, there is a room that has screens almost 360 degrees around, and any traffic camera that we have mounted on a traffic light feeds into that system, and so you can see in real time where there might be backups from buses that are blocking more of the lane or somewhere where the loading zone isn't going as planned. The city has been partnering so closely with the MBTA along this entire push, and T staff are actually physically sitting with us in Boston's Traffic Management Center, as we also have staff from Boston's Transportation Department sitting over at MassDOT headquarters monitoring from their nerve center as well. And so we can troubleshoot in real time, assess what is working, what is not working, and then make the tweaks day by day as we go. The real preparation is for when school starts.
César, ¿cómo están haciendo por el tema de ayudar a las personas en español? Porque vimos esta mañana que en algunos lugares no había personas que hablaban español. ¿La ciudad está trabajando en eso?
Sí. En una de las locaciones necesitamos más miembros del equipo de MBTA y también de la ciudad, especialmente miembros que hablan otras lenguas. Es una situación muy confusa con todos los residentes de Boston, especialmente ahora en el tiempo del año con diferentes rutas y el comienzo del año escolar también. Entonces, tenemos una relación muy cerca con MBTA y una colaboración con sobre todos los detalles de estos esfuerzos. Entonces, uno de los más importantes información hoy de mi ruta y experiencia es la necesidad de más acceso, especialmente para los residentes que hablan otras lenguas.
All right, thanks,
Great, thank you.